The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine intercepted a conversation between a Russian citizen from the Belgorod region in which he spoke about the enormous losses of the Russian army at the front. As noted to the press service of the main intelligence directorate, the man told his interlocutor that he had information about tens of thousands of unidentified bodies stored in Rostov. According to him, funerals of occupiers have become more frequent in the Belgorod region. One of our mutual friends told me he said there are 56,000 still unidentified in Rostov. They found an arm there. They found a leg there, says the Russian. As the GUR reminded, there will be just retribution for every war crime committed against the Ukrainian people. Sergei Krivenko of Moscow-based Citizen Army Law, a human rights group, says Russia's aggressive censoring of stats, along with virtually no remaining independent news outlets, means that the rate of casualties is unlikely to sway popular opinion about the war. In the 90s, when the Chechen War began, there were independent media outlets that objectively discussed the military topic on their pages and told the truth about the losses, he told VOA's Russian service. And this had a sobering effect on society. There is the most severe censorship now. The authorities have everything under control, and for publications of this kind, you can easily get a prison term. Krivenko also noted that the majority of troops sent to Ukraine are contract soldiers, an important distinction from the Afghan and Chechen wars fought primarily by forced conscripts that were sent to slaughter, which caused tension and backlash in society, even to the point of creating social movements. Those who voluntarily signed contracts to fight in Ukraine, he added, made their own choice. In addition, they receive a decent salary, he said. That is, ordinary people do not feel particularly sorry for them. Krivenko said that while Russia's enormous losses in Ukraine cannot be hidden, with cemeteries expanding in every Russian city and town, it will not force the Kremlin to change course. They will only turn up patriotic rhetoric more intensely to explain the growing losses, he said. They will repeat that there is a war with the West, so everyone goes to the front. Roman Dobrokotov, an independent investigative outlet based in Latvia, said focus groups have shown that Russians are tired of the war in Ukraine, mainly over casualties and its effect on the economy.
The president of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, said that the next group of soldiers has been sent to Ukraine and broadcast the images of the departure ceremony on his Telegram channel. A special flight with volunteers took off from the Grozny International Airport named after hero of Russia Akhmet Kadyrov. Another group of true Russian patriots set off to protect the interests of the motherland in the area of a special military operation, he wrote. According to him, the volunteers underwent an accelerated training course, which includes a wide range of the most in-demand skills and abilities. The best instructors from the Russian Special Forces University named after Vladimir Putin taught the volunteers everything necessary for effective combat in various conditions, the head of Chechnya said, adding that upon arrival they will join the Akhmet Special Forces.
Врага, мы очищаем свою землю, мы очищаем свои исторические земли. Руками украинцев воюют все члены НАТО, Америка, Запад, все. Почему? Потому что мы независимое, суверенное государство, с большим ресурсом, богатством, большая страна. Некоторым это, конечно, испокон веков всегда это не нравилось. И ни один человек в этом мире не скажет, что мы победили русских. Мы победили Россию. Не было такой истории, не будет ничего. Поэтому я от вашего имени прежде всего хочу поблагодарить общественный фонд первого президента Чеченской Республики, Героя России Ахмадовича. Также главу Чеченской Республики, Героя России, генерал-полковника Рамзана Ахмадовича Кадырова. И, конечно, инструкторов, которые с вами работают. базе Российского университета спецназа. Берегите себя. Ахмат! Сила! Россия!
Хочу выразить благодарность Рамзану Ахмадовичу Кадырову всем за то, что они оказывают содействие, заботу в обеспечении, в обучении готовых специалистов для того, чтобы мы принимали участие в СВО, добивались в первую очередь победы для нашей страны.
Патриотически отношусь к этой войне. Я уже приезжаю сюда в 5-й раз через подразделение Ахмат. Настрой у нас очень боевой, даже более чем.
Israel has launched a large-scale attack on the Iran-backed Houthi militants in Yemen with over 100 aircraft. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Thursday that the country's air force had struck Houthi targets. Strikes have targeted key infrastructure, including the power station in Sana'a, leading to significant outages across the city. Netanyahu spoke from the underground command center at the Defense Ministry in Tel Aviv, where he oversaw the Israeli airstrikes with Defense Minister Israel Katz. The strikes targeted the rebel-held capital of Sana'a and the port city of Hodeidah, following several days of Houthi launches setting off sirens in Israel. "We are determined to root out this terrorist arm of Iran's axis of evil. We will persist in this until we complete the job," Netanyahu said. The Israeli military said it attacked infrastructure used by the Houthis at the international airport in Sana'a and ports at Hodeidah, Al-Salif and Ras Kantib along with power stations. It came a day after Netanyahu said that the Houthis, too, will learn what Hamas and Hezbollah and Assad's regime and others learned. The Houthis' media outlet confirmed the strikes in a Telegram post but gave no immediate details. The operation is allegedly supported by intelligence from the US and UK, as reports suggest Israel initially lacked a comprehensive target bank. Local media described severe disruptions to electricity in Sana'a, exacerbating the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the region. The U.S. military also has targeted the Houthis in Yemen in recent days. The United Nations has noted that the ports are important entryways for humanitarian aid. Over the weekend, 16 people were wounded when a Houthi missile hit a playground in Tel Aviv. Last week, Israeli jets struck Sana'a and Hodeidah, killing 9 people, calling it a response to previous Houthi attacks. The Houthis also have been targeting shipping on the Red Sea corridor, calling it solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza.
אנחנו מדליקים הערב נר שני של חנוכה. אנחנו נמצאים במלחמת התקומה, דור המכבים של ימינו, ולפני שעה קלה חיל האוויר תקף מטרות של ארגון הטרור החותי בתימן, גם בקו החוף וגם בצנע. אנחנו נחושים לגדוע את זרוע הטרור הזה של ציר הרשע של איראן. אנחנו נתמיד בזה עד שנשלים את המלאכה.
ראינו כרגע פעולה מדויקת של חיל האוויר הישראלי, תוך פגיעה ביעדים אסטרטגיים חותיים בתימן, בשדה תעופה, בנמל, וכמו שאמרנו, מי שפוגע בישראל, אנחנו נפגע בו. גם נצוד את כל מנהיגי החות'ים, נפגע בהם כפי שעשינו במקומות אחרים. אף אחד לא יוכל להתחמק מידה ארוכה של ישראל, נפגע בהם על מנת להסיר איומים על מדינת ישראל.
In mid-November, Ukraine received long-awaited permission to use Western missiles to strike Russia. After effectively using them in the first days, today Ukraine has significantly reduced the intensity of missile strikes against Russia, writes the New York Times. The missiles were effective, according to senior NATO officials, although the effect was limited and did not change the trajectory of the war. But the war also did not escalate as some feared. Admiral Rob Bauer, NATO's top military officer, recently said that ATACMS strikes had severely hit a number of weapons factories and ammunition depots in Russia, forcing Russia to move many of its logistical facilities away from the front, he said. They don't like ATACMS coming into their country by air. They don't like it because it's effective. It limits their ability to fight effectively on the front lines, and that's what you want. Then the question is it enough to win? Admiral Bauer said in an interview in early December. At the time Ukraine received permission to strike Russia, it probably had only about 50 ATACMS missiles left, 2 US officials told the Times. There was no chance of getting more, they said. The limited US supplies were already earmarked for deployment in the Middle East and Asia. British officials who followed Biden in allowing Ukraine to use British Storm Shadow missiles against Russia also recently said they had nothing more to offer, citing data from the Russian Ministry of Defense and Russian military bloggers. The NYT writes that after receiving permission from its partners, Ukraine carried out at least half a dozen missile strikes on Russian territory, in which it used a total of at least 31 ATACMS missiles and 14 Storm Shadow missiles. The most destructive attack was on November 20th by Storm Shadow missiles on a Russian command bunker near the town of Marenyo in the Kursk region, officials and analysts said. The NYT also recalls that on November 21, Russia launched a demonstrative strike with an Oreshnik missile on the Dnieper, calling it a response to the strike on Marenyo. And on November 27, the chief of the General Staff of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov, called Washington to discuss the risks of escalation. After this call, Ukraine did not launch ATACMS or Storm Shadows for 2 weeks, the publication adds. Some analysts say Ukraine has scaled back its missile strikes because it initially targeted Russian targets it had long wanted to hit. Now that it has fewer missiles left, Ukraine is holding them back in case it encounters a particularly juicy target.
A tightly scripted meeting of the Russia-dominated economic alliance of several ex-Soviet nations briefly went awry Thursday when 2 leaders engaged in bickering during a live broadcast of the event. Russian President Vladimir Putin and other heads of states attended the meeting of the Eurasian Economic Union, which includes Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, who has increasingly sought to phase down his country's ties with Moscow and forge closer relations with the West, joined the meeting via video link after canceling his trip following a positive test for COVID-19. The carefully choreographed session at a resort near St. Petersburg veered off script when Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, whose country was taking the rotating chairmanship in the economic grouping from Armenia, urged Pashinyan to visit Belarus for the union's next meeting. Pashinyan responded that he plans to attend the Belarus meeting via video call, after which Lukashenko pressed for an explanation and even offered to send a plane to fly the Armenian delegation to the Belarusian capital. Pashinyan then pointed to his earlier decision to freeze high-level visits to Belarus over Lukashenko's support for Armenia's rival, Azerbaijan. "I don't think this is the right format for discussing these issues," Pashinyan added. But Lukashenko kept arguing and Pashinyan snapped back. Putin, who sat next to Lukashenko, and other leaders watched the altercation in stony silence. The Eurasian Economic Union was formed a decade ago to encourage stronger business ties and facilitate trade between its members, but it has been marred by economic and other disputes between members.
Как это предусмотрено уставными документами. Примерно 29 мая будущего года. Ориентировочный.
Хочу уточнить, что вот мы не возражаем против проведения заседания Высшего экономического совета ЕС в Минске, но я хочу заранее сказать, что наша делегация примет участие в заседании в режиме видеоконференции. Спасибо.
А что за проблема? Что у вас за проблема? Далеко до Минска или некому вас подвезти? Ну, мы организуем доставку вашей делегации, если нужно.
Александр Григорьевич, я по этому поводу выступил с публичным заявлением, и это заявление остается в силе. Я не думаю, что это правильный формат, чтобы обсудить эти вопросы. Просто вы сказали, затронули вопрос, я должен был сразу среагировать, что не было никаких недопониманий.
Ну, мы рассмотрим ваше заявление.
А что тут рассмотреть? Вы не можете рассмотреть мое заявление, потому что мое заявление это не подлежит к рассмотрению.
Да, мы это только его... Мы рассмотрим, может, телевизора не будет, чтобы вы дистанционно выступали.
Нет проблем. Предлагаю перейти к процедуре подписания. Я понимаю, что, может, у вас появились еще и проблемы с телевизорами. Я понимаю, отношусь к этому.
Norway has refused to rescue Russian sailors from the Ursa Major ship that sank in the Mediterranean. The Oslo Carrier 3 vessel, sailing in the Mediterranean Sea under the Norwegian flag, for an unknown reason refused to take on board the Russian sailors from the Ursa Major vessel, who were drowning in the Mediterranean Sea, the press service of the vessel's owner, the Oberon Logistics Group of companies, reported. The Russian Defense Ministry called this circumstance a gross violation of the International Convention on Salvage. Oberon Logistics clarified that the boat with the Russians headed towards the nearby Oslo Carrier 3. However, the ship's partially Russian-speaking crew refused to accept the sailors on board. When the lifeboat approached the ship, the Norwegian vessel refused to accept the Ursa Major crew members, citing some kind of prohibition, they added. Recall that on December 24 it became known that the Ursa Major ship, which was sailing from St. Petersburg to Primorai, sank in the Mediterranean Sea. It was expected in Vladivostok in a month. But 110 kilometers from the coast of Spain, in the neutral zone, the crew sent out a distress signal. Oberon Logistics stated that the cause of the ship sinking was a terrorist act. The head of the State Duma Defense Committee Andrei Kartopolov, in turn, stated that the refusal of the Norwegian side to save the Russian sailors could threaten it with an international court. Such actions are not only a violation of an international convention, but also a violation of generally accepted human norms and rules. This needs to be documented and filed against them in an international court, at least against the captain and the ship owner, Kartopolov said. The crew of the Russian vessel Ursa Major, which was sinking in the Mediterranean Sea, was rescued by sailors from the Spanish ship Salvamar Drago, the Oberon Logistics Group reported. 14 out of 16 crew members were rescued, 2 people were missing.